Today I'm going to be looking at the full assessment of the hip. To begin with, when we're looking at the hip, we want to go for the plane of movement that has the least range. So we're going to start off in our frontal plane. We're going to look at the frontal plane in both loading and unloading. Then we'll move on to the transverse plane, which is the range of, that really drives that movement. Again, we'll be looking at in both loading and unloading. And then we'll move on to our sagittal plane, loading and unloading. But this one's different. Where we might see a lack of range, it's probably not to do with a lack of range, but more of a lack of sequencing. We now need to put into practice a structure of seeing the movement. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with a walk. And the reason we use a walk is because this is a movement that everyone is pretty good at. So everybody can do our walk, and to the best of their ability, so they're going to be capable of hiding a bad movement, and that's the reason we want to use this first. We're then going to push that movement and see if we can establish any asymmetry, and if we still can't see anything, then we're going to highlight this movement by breaking it down and stabilizing the movement so that we can look at it joint by joint. So to begin with our hip, we're going to start off in that frontal plane. We're going to be looking at adduction. When we're in gait, the easiest thing to look for is by viewing gait from behind and looking at the pelvis. Where we might see a right tilt, we're going to see a lack of adduction to the right. Where we might see a left tilt, we're going to see a left adduction, a lack of range to the left in adduction. But if we can't see anything here, this is when we want to make it a little bit more challenging to try and show up any difficulties. So what we're going to do is take our walk and make it a little more extreme and drive through adduction by taking the legs across. Once again, we're going to see that pelvis differ, but we're also looking for the foot that doesn't want to get underneath that pelvis. That's the side that we'll be going for. If it isn't clear here, this is when we want to take it to our last chance. To make it harder, we're going to stabilise that movement. We're going to take it into a lunge. So we're going to bring it into a narrow lunge, but take the opposite hand across. Here you're going to be looking for the side that is not quite as stable, or a bailing out of the knee. We're then going to look at abduction. We start off in walk, and the same again, we're going to look from behind at the pelvis. Here, where we see a right tilt, we're going to see a lack of abduction to the left. If we see a left tilt, we're going to see a lack of abduction in the right. But if it isn't as clear, we once again want to challenge this movement, the motion a little bit further. So here we would have our clients walk in a nice wide gait. So we're going into abduction. Once again, the side that doesn't want to play, the side that's not, that's coming underneath that pelvis, is the side that you're going to go for. But if we can't see it, we need to put it under the microscope and make it a little more clear. So here we're going to take it into a nice wide lunge, driving the opposite arm, bringing it through. This is going to cause the body to go further into abduction, and we'll be looking for the leg that's the most unstable, or again that bailout. We now move on to our transverse plane. Again, this is where we're really driving that movement. We're going to be looking first of all at internal rotation. And we believe that we are feeling internally rotated in both the front foot and the back foot throughout gait. And only do we go into external rotation at that push-off. So this is probably the hardest thing to look for without manipulating the movement, because what we're actually looking for is the rotation of the pelvis over the top of the femur on the left-hand side versus the right. So what we might see is the midline of the femur pulling out, or we may even see a lack of hip extension. We'll start off in gait, and really the best thing to look for is any lack of hip extension, or as I said, that femur flipping out. We then need to push that movement a little bit further. So to create internal rotation, we're going to turn those feet in. Here we're going to look at the foot, and the foot that wants to spin out early, that's the side we're going to be going for. If it isn't clear and we haven't created any asymmetry, we're then going to move on to our last chance, our spotlight movement. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take that into a crossover lunge using the hand as a driver. So increasing that internal rotation, and the side that bails out early is the side that we're going to go for. We then move on to our external rotation. We mentioned here that we believe this happens only in the push-off. So the best way of seeing external rotation is by working with a turn or a cut in sport. If we still can't see any asymmetry here, we're going to make it a little bit harder. So we're going to externally rotate the feet, walk forward and add a turn. So forward and then coming back. The easiest thing really to see is that lack of range as we come away. If you still can't see this, then we're going to put it under spotlight and we're going to take it into a nice wide lunge. So we're going to bring that lunge out to the side. What we need to look for here is the side that's bailing out early. So as the foot starts to spin in at the front, going into early everting, that will be the side that is lacking that external rotation, although both sides will be feeling externally rotated. We're now going to look at flexion, which happens in gait at the swing phase and heel strike. And what we see happening here is the anterior rotation of the pelvis, or the pelvis starting anteriorly rotated, which denies the femur the time to posteriorly rotate. So what we're going to do is we start off in gait, and the best way of viewing this is to look from the side, and we're going to look for that shortest stride. If you can't see anything here, we're going to drive that motion further to try and give the femur that time to posteriorly rotate. And what we will do is ask our client to walk with a lunge. We want to look at the back leg, and the lower the knee goes, the better the hip flexion is. If we still can't see this, to drive that asymmetry, we would take a nice deep lunge, or we could step down. This would increase the need for flexion. Once again, we'd be looking at how deep that back knee goes, and the deeper the knee, the better the flexion at the front. Moving on to hip extension. This happens at the back of the stride when the pelvis has finished posteriorly rotating and the femur is anteriorly rotating. The main movement comes from the pelvis travelling forward. To view this in gait, you're best to look at it from the side, and we're looking at the shortest stride. So we're looking at the back in that short stride. It's the side that you want to go for. If we can't see this, then we're going to push that movement even further. What we're going to do is going to ask our client to walk with a long stride. This will drive the femur into anterior rotation. We're going to look from the side, and the side that is the shortest at the back is where we're going to go for. And once again, if we still can't see anything, we really need to take this further, put it under our spotlight, our last chance. So what we're going to do is take it into a lunge forward. And we're going to try and make that a nice long lunge. Viewing it from the side, you'll see the side that is less stable, and the side that is shorter is the side that you want to go for at the back. I hope you've enjoyed listening to me talking about the hip. Thank you very much.